Peace everyone, welcome to the Baruti Show, and I'm your host, Baruti Kafele. My topic for the Baruti Show today is the so-called cultural divide within Black America. I repeat, the so-called cultural divide within Black America. Now, unfortunately, within the Black community, we have intra-group discrimination amongst people of African descent within this country. Now, when I say African people and Black people, I use the terms interchangeably, but they're synonymous with one another within the contextual framework of this episode. Now, I'm specifically talking about African Americans, continental Africans, and also Afro-Caribbeans. Now, continental Africans, a lot of the time, they're first, second, and third generation, and they immigrated within this country or immigrated to this country for a plurality or multiplicity of reasons. A lot of the time, they wanted to free themselves. A lot of them came here with refugee status to get away from a lot of the governments, the dictatorial regimes within their respective countries within the continent of Africa, or to get away from a lot of the poverty within the continent of Africa. Now, you have African Americans who were kidnapped or traded for the purpose of slavery via the transatlantic slave trade, which lasted from 1619 all the way up to 1865. Of course, there's a post-traumatic slavery which occurs, but that's another discussion. And also you have Afro-Caribbeans who immigrated to the United States, the United Kingdom, and the various other countries, just like continental Africans, for the purpose of seeking economic opportunity and also possibly to free themselves from a lot of the dictatorial regimes within the Caribbean or Latin America, whatever the case may be. Now, within the United States, a lot of the time, there's anonymity, there's a lack of trust among people within the community, the Black community, not knowing that we're all the same people because we all originated within the continent of Africa. Now, Sheikh Anta Diop, the scholar, wrote the book, The Cultural Unity of Black Africa, Civilizations of Barbarism, African Origins of Civilization, Myth of Reality. He wrote various books to corroborate and to substantiate the fact that there's actually a cultural unity among people of African descent globally, whether you like it or not. There's a cultural unity. There's a way that we look at things. There's a way that we act. There's a way that we live. There's a way that we express ourselves. We have a common culture, whether you like it or not. And a lot of the time, we get caught up with our colonizers, with internalizing the proclivity or the culture of the colonizers, whether we talk about linguistics, whether we talk about fashion, whether we talk about our cultural approach, whether we talk about lifestyle. We internalize that to the point in which we focus on the culture of the people that superimpose their cultures on us instead of focusing on the unity that we have among one another as people that were oppressed and people that have suffered from the remnants of oppression. So that's a lot of the problems that we suffer from, like Afro-Caribbeans against African Americans, or continental Africans against African Americans, or whatever the case may be. We need to get out of that, because I saw a video that made me cringe earlier in the week talking about the divide between Africans and African Americans, where the continental Africans thinking that they're better than African Americans, and African Americans looking at continental Africans as primitive people, when in actuality, we all suffer from colonialism, we all suffer from slavery, and we all suffer from neo-colonialism. Colonialism is when one group of people capitalize and benefit from the economic resources of a colonized people within their own territory, in which you have the colonizer and the colonized, the oppressor and the oppressed. Neo-colonialism is when you have political independence and economic dependence. Or should I say political independence, yes, and economic dependence, in which you're dependent on the industrial resources and the capital of European countries and now Asian countries. But then again, the resources are within the countries in which you inhabit. And that's within the continent of Africa. And George Ayittey coins that the African paradox. Dr. George Ayittey coined that as the African paradox. Africa being the wealthiest and most opulent piece of real estate on the globe, but contradictorily speaking, have the majority of the poorest countries on the globe. And that's because of a concept based on the dependency theory, and also various other concepts, but I call it the dependency theory, which was coined by Hans Sanger and Raoul Prubitsch, in which they talk about something called import substitution industrialization, meaning that a lot of the wealthy countries, or the so-called developed world, which is basically the Western world, what they do is they import a lot of natural resources from the continent of Africa and also various other parts of the globe because of the cheap labor but the opulent resources. And what they do is they capitalize on that for their own benefit, while at the same time the people within the African countries, they suffer because they're not benefited from the resources which are indigenous to that area. So what happened was you had a lot of Africans immigrate to the Americas, and with them immigrated to the Americas for a better life, because we have been taught to hate ourselves, because we have been dehumanized through slavery, because we've been objectified, because we have been commoditized, and also there have been rules within slavery, the slave codes, which basically mandated that we're not allowed to read, or if we were to learn how to read, then of course we would suffer or get punished severely. We're still suffering from that, meaning that a lot of us, we're not reading, we're not incentivizing education, and I'm not talking about education within the confines of a school. I'm talking about self-education. I'm talking about seeking knowledge. I'm talking about reading. I'm talking about studying. I'm talking about knowing and learning your history, and also teaching and disseminating your history. A lot of us still suffer from that. So when we see someone that's African, we see them as inferior because subconsciously speaking, we suffer from the post-traumatic slave syndrome coined by Dr. Joy Leary, to the point at which we look at ourselves as inferior. We don't see ourselves as the progenitors and matriarchs of civilization. So we take that on continental Africans, and also Afro-Caribbeans suffer from that as well. So what we are a divisive people, generally speaking, and what we need to do is we need to break that monotony by ascertaining who we are as a people historically, by reading books like Civilization of Barbarism by Sheikh Kundajab, Introduction to Black Studies by Dr. Malana Karenga, The Destruction of Black Civilization by Chancellor Williams, reading various books, reading books by scholars like the late Dr. Ali Mazoy, studying people like Dr. John Henry Clark, various scholars, Dr. Yosef Ben Yakinen, so that we can know who we are as an African people, and so that we can know that we're a unified people, so that we can become culturally unified, so that we can bring about changes within the society. Because this cultural divisiveness is by design, and if it continues to go, then we'll just be in a state of corrosiveness and consternation as a people. So I just wanted to address that. So hopefully, if you're a person of African descent, no matter where you're located within the diaspora, within this 196,940,000 square miles of the planet Earth, you'll take this information, you'll utilize it, you'll internalize it, so that we could become a better people and cooperate, so that we could bring about the change that we want to be within this world. Because people of African descent, culturally, within the social stratification system, we are at the bottom. In order for us to get to the top, we need to have the consciousness, because the consciousness will be the impetus and the driving force which will lead to economic development as a people. So that's what I have to say, and if you would like to learn more, read the books that I aforementioned, and also just contact me, and then we can see what we can do from there. So in the meantime, take care, peace and love. Baruti Libre.